My title is John. I'm 23. I work at a 24/7 bar in my town that's known for our pizza and drinks. We do not truly have any other nourishment alternatives, but individuals appear to appreciate it besides. I never caught on why the proprietors chosen they needed us to convey pizzas. It's a parcel of bother for likely not that much additional cash. But since we didn't truly get that numerous conveyance orders, I was continuously the as it were driver amid the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. move. On this night, I strolled into the put being lovely swarmed. There were a few huge bunches, and with conveyances being moderate, I was making a difference out with holding up tables in the interim. There were a number of conveyances I made, perhaps once an hour, and at 3:00 a.m., there was another normal conveyance for me to drop off. I got in the single pizza and got in my car. The address was 15 minutes absent, so I written it into Google Maps and begun driving. Everything up until this point was totally ordinary. This was a bit like any other delivery, and truly, I was upbeat to urge out of the swarmed bar and onto the calm streets. Whereas driving in spite of the fact that I got caught off protect when my Google Maps all of a sudden said I'd arrived. I wasn't indeed in a neighborhood. I pulled over on the check and attempted to figure out where I'd gone off base, but double-checking everything. This was the address that was on the arrange. It was for the entrance to a Timberland Protect or Stop or something. There weren't indeed any houses adjacent that it may have been blended up with, so I called the customer's number. It rang for less than a second sometime recently they picked up. Hello, typically John. I'm fair attempting to convey your pizza, but I think you've given us the off-base address. There was an oddly long stop as I might listen the fellow breathing into the phone sometime recently. He portrayed my car and said to see to my cleared out. I did as he said and truly saw nothing but a totally pitch-black timberland. At that point, I saw something move. It was him waving his arms within the disgust to induce my attention. He was standing within the timberland behind the road. I do not know why he didn't fair come onto the side of the street where it was simpler to see, or indeed, why he requested it here to start with. I got out and begun strolling over. It was difficult not to take note how frightfully calm it was exterior another to this woodland protect. There were no cars any place and no other individuals. I found it truly odd as well that as I strolled up, the fellow didn't move. Like he didn't meet me midway. He fair stood there and observed me walk over the road and up to the grass fair sometime recently the edge of the timberland where he was at. I ceased midway through the grass, realizing this was getting truly odd. I waved him over to come snatch the pizza and pay for it. The fellow wavered, and rather than strolling up to me, he looked behind me and on either side, lovely clearly searching for any bystanders. My nerves were truly tall at this point, which made it difficult to think straight. On the off chance that my intellect was clear, I definitely would have fair taken off for my car and left. Before I might come to my faculties, the fellow started approaching me. He was strolling truly quick and didn't moderate down when he got closer. I lurched back, but it was too late. The fellow snatched my upper arm and begun pulling me back toward the woodland. He was clearly attempting to be calm, in spite of the fact that not shouting or anything, but instead putting all of his endeavors into constraining me back. We battled back and forward for a few seconds. Sometime recently, I realized I couldn't break free and begun punching. It only took a number of clean shots to his face before he let go, and by then we were as it were some feet from the timberland. I took off running, looking back as it were to check on the off chance that he was following. I saw him get up and run into the woodland, but to my frightfulness, two other folks came out from behind the trees. I got in my car and drove straight to the police station that was on the other side of the square, but clearly the folks had totally run off by at that point. I really went back to work after that, clarifying what happened to my boss and inquiring in the event that he had any data on the guy's arrange. All he had was a phone number, which was as of now disengaged, and a to begin with title that was most likely fake. After that, he sent me domestic early with a free cut of pizza, which wasn't precisely a reasonable exchange, but I wasn't complaining. On the off chance that I'd been idiotic sufficient to walk up to the woodland that night, I likely would have been right away bounced by all three men with no witnesses. Fortunately, my hesitance to approach him made it a less demanding battle to elude, but it exceptionally rapidly might have turned into something distant more awful. I take the same course each single day in and out of the city. I do not live exceptionally distant fair 30 or so minutes out within the calm rural areas. The street I took was continuously calm at night, which was a colossal help compared to the activity there was amid the day. I was driving on this street and everything was going fair because it continuously did. It was a small past 10 p.m. I was tuning into my music and upbeat to be nearly domestic when I was 10 minutes absent and entering the woodsy region fair sometime recently the begin of the rural areas. A light channeled from up the road. Nothing was off it to begin with, but because it got closer, it appeared to be truly shinning, like nearly blinding me. I truly had to gaze at the bare of the street to form beyond any doubt I remained in my path. But fair as I thought they were aiming to pass me, I all of a sudden may see a sea of their tires right in my path. They were driving on the off-base side of the street approximately to head-on collision with me. My reflexes took over and I swerved to the right instantly, flying off the street and hammering into the jettison that bordered the woods. It took me a number of seconds to assemble myself, but I didn't appear to be exceptionally harmed or anything. I unfastened my Situate belt and hopped out of the car. It was add up to for beyond any doubt. The total front was beautiful, much tore off, and it truly looked like I ought to have kicked the bucket in there. At that point, I recalled what happened and quickly got pissed off. I climbed out of the ditch and looked down the street. I anticipated to see their headlights blurring out within the separate, but I was astounded they had ceased and pulled over not as well distant down. Sometime recently drawing nearer them, I rapidly looked at my environment and realized how separated we were. So sometime recently standing up to them, I ran back down to my car and got my phone, calling the police. I didn't know who was in that car up there, or on the off chance that they were tanked and irate or something, so I figured I'd play it secure. The administrator said they would be here in 5 minutes, so I hung up and begun to walk back up the discard, but was startled by a fellow presently standing at the beat. He didn't inquire in case I was affirm or say anything at all. "Are you the one that made me crash? You'll have killed me," I said, attempting to hold back my outrage until the cops arrived. He still didn't talk, but the light from his car on the street all of a sudden begun getting brighter and coming toward where he was standing. I was still within the jettison, but seemed to see that it was the same car, and someone else was driving it. They supported up right to the edge of the discard. At that point, the driver entryway swung open, and another fellow got out. The two men begun talking in a distinctive dialect. I think it was Russian or German. I'm not great with dialects, but it had that forceful sound to it. As they talked, the one fellow surged around to the back of the car and tossed open the trunk, but rather than snatching anything, he turned to confront me. Both of them instantly came running at me down into the jettison. It didn't take me more than a part moment to put the pieces together. I turned around and sprinted into the woods as the men ran around my car and proceeded chasing me. They were both huge and heavier looking men, so after a great miniature of sprinting, I'd misplaced them. Now I was within the center of the woods with completely no light to see where I was going. I didn't indeed know which heading was which. With no sounds of the men adjacent, I aimlessly meandered through the trees. I wasn't attempting to get back to the road while the men were still around, but I too didn't want to induce totally misplaced so that the police wouldn't be able to assist me. After as it were a handful minutes of strolling, in spite of the fact that I might listen the sirens within the remove to my cleared out, I'd taken after the sound, driving me straight to the street where I may see the cop car at the beat of the jettison and two officers reviewing my car. There were no signs of the men anyplace. I clarified what happened and they composed down a report, but the follow-up examination was negligible since, as it were, their portrayal was to go off of. Nothing was stolen from my car, in spite of the fact that it's beautiful obtrusive that they were attempting to toss me in their trunk, but whether that was arranged sometime recently or after the crash is hazy. Possibly they made a mistake and were attempting to cover it up, or it might have all been fair as they expected. I'm an appalling long-distance driver. I just needed to put that out there to start with, since my inexperience really appears. I nearly never drive more than 30 minutes at a time, but for work, I had to form a 10-hour drive from my little hometown of Broly all the way up to San Francisco, where our fundamental office was. I've been with the company for less than 6 months working remotely, so this was mine to begin with time making this drive. Shockingly, the way there wasn't through the wonderful California coastal interstate either. It takes the lesser-used interstate on the inverse edge of the state, going through the purge deserts and littler cities for the most portion. Once more, I'd never taken this course sometime recently, so this was all unused to me. I set out my GPS and begun driving at 6:00 p.m. This would be so that I may ideally make it right at check-in time at the inn, which was 3:00 p.m. the another day. The primary hour of the drive was through my town, and it gradually dwindled down to some buildings here and there, and inevitably nothing. There too weren't truly any other cars. Almost 3 hours in, I passed the gas station and it reminded me to check on my tank. I looked at the meter and taken note it was getting near to running out. Really, it was truly near to running out. Driving for this long on a boring, purged street made me space out and not pay consideration to it. I figured I was great sufficient to hold up until the another gas station in spite of the fact that for the another 20 minutes I had my eyes open for any gas station exits. But as each mile passed with no gas station, I begun to stress. That feeling of fear came over me for being so stupid to have let myself get this moo on gas within the center of a forsake. I feel my car begin to snap haphazardly and stammer, so I knew this was truly terrible. Fair as I was considering that my car was attending to close off at any moment, I saw someone's headlights on the side of the street. It looked like a police car observing the throughway, so with beautiful much no choice, I pulled off onto the bare and stopped a small ways behind them. I was trusting they had a gas canister I might utilize. I got out and begun strolling up to their car. It had a highlight by the driver's side reflect and a light bar on the roof, so from behind, it looked precisely like a police car. But as I got closer, I wasn't so beyond any doubt. Either way, I required offer assistance, and by presently, I accepted they had to have seen me strolling up the sides. When I got up to the side of the car, it was clearly a police car, but not one in benefit, likely an ancient one that somebody had bought after the police markings and other stuff were expelled. When I got up to the window though, nobody was interior, but it didn't seem deserted either. The interior looked generally clean, and there was indeed a basic supply pack on the traveler situate with what looked like nourishment and snacks in it. Something approximately this was truly off in spite of the fact that I looked up and out at the encompassing forsake. It was truly dim, generally purged aside from some stray cactus, but as it were took me a moment to take note something moving out there. They were lovely distant from the street, so I couldn't tell what they were doing, but there was certainly an individual out there moving around. Knowing this wasn't reaching to go the way I anticipated, I was getting to go back to my car and attempt to call 911 or possibly roadside help. But the figure abruptly halted moving and stood still. It was like they had taken note of me and were abruptly looking over. I didn't know what to do, so I kind of stood there. At that point, the individual begun hurrying toward the street. I took this opportunity to run back to my car. The man must have been full-on sprinting in spite of the fact that since by the time I was in my driver's situate, they were as of now at the street. They stood by their car and gazed at me, and I may presently see their confront in my headlights. They had brief dark hair and a dark facial hair with earth and sand covering their whole body from their shoes all the way up to their confront. I couldn't tell on the off chance that he looked frantic or what, but he stood like a deer in headlights as in case holding up for me to either drive absent or get out. I was as well frightened to undertake beginning my car since in case it stammered and he listened that, at that point he'd know I was stuck. So I sat there and attempted over and over to call 911. By the time I at long last got through, the man had gotten in his car, and a miniature afterward he drove absent, clearing out his headlights off and vanishing down the street. As for a while later, an officer made it 30 minutes later and poured many gallons of gas in my tank. I told them around the man who was acting truly suspicious and was out within the lead, but he generally brushed it off and didn't indeed check on it. He indeed kidded that he was burying a body out there and acted like it was nothing. I was so shaken up in spite of the fact that I didn't put out much of a battle and proceeded my drive. It's been a whereas since this all took put, but I can't help considering around what that man was doing out there, or conceivably how near I was to finding something.
Thank you for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Midnight Mysteria, for more amazing horror stories.